Hello from the Tradelands Nation. Today's video is actually an announcement of a new section to our website, the reveal of our ship statistics and ratings. This update represents almost 10 months of data collection on how the various ships in Tradelands actually perform. And rather than show you a spreadsheet that just includes a bunch of numbers that most people will have no clue how to read or what they represent, we instead provided a ranking for each of those ships, and we did it in 3 categories: their trading performance, their privateering performance, and their naval combat performance. While the website provides this in a list by level, in today's video we're actually going to put these ships into a tiered list to give you a different way of looking at the same data. That way you can see the grade for each ship in the way that works best for you. A couple of quick notes. We decided, for now anyway, to only rank the ships that were able to compete in all 3 of our categories. That means if your ship does not have cannons, can't hold cargo, or doesn't have any measurable sailing metrics, unfortunately, we're not going to be showing it here today. We also decided to exclude any ship that requires a voucher or was on a limited time purchase. I mean, we have the data for these ships, but we just decided it wasn't going to be a fair comparison, since really we're looking at ships that can do all 3 categories and are available to all players. But if you find this data that we're presenting helpful and you want to see us cover a specific ship, just let us know, and we can always add it in a future video. Finally, always the fundamental principle of our group is to ensure truth through data. This analysis does not include any cosmetic, vanity, or personal bias, and is purely a statistical review of the ships that we see in-game. As the adage goes, a ship is only as good as its crew and captain, so your own experience in these ships may vary. After all, I've seen plenty of expert crews that are able to push the very limits of the ship's capabilities, so in the end, how a ship works for you will always supersede its performance on paper. And really, we're judging its performance on paper here today. We are going to use the tier maker method for ranking these ships. However, because we don't recommend any ships ranked at either the D or F tier, we're going to merge these 2 into one just for simplicity. You can see a summary of what each category represents in our model, and we're going to go from the bottom up, ranking the ships in order by level. And our first ship is the Lark. It is a level 1 ship with good crosswind performance. The ship was meant to basically check off one of the developer's boxes, making sure that players have access to a ship that can do crosswind performance at level 1. It's used as a sort of test drive for those who want to practice their crosswind sailing, but it's not useful for anything really, and we recommend that you skip this ship entirely. The next ship is the level 1 Sparrow. This specific version of the ship that we're rating in the F tier is the one that you have to build. You see, you get this ship for free when you join the game, so there's no reason to build another one. It does its job towards familiarizing its player to the game, and it does an okay job of trading, and that's really what you're going to be doing in it. But since you already have one, you don't need another one, so go ahead and skip this one as well. For the next ship in our F tier, we go all the way to level 4, the Pelican. This ship is supposed to be an improved version of the Heron, but its trading performance is actually worse than the ships that you can already build. If you consider the material costs for this ship, you will spend in total around 40,000 doubloons to build this thing, meaning you're basically setting yourself back 40 grand with no benefit. You're better off just saving your money and waiting for level 5 and building one of the ships at that level instead of building this thing, which you'll probably scrap right after you level up. At level 5 we have the Kestrel, one of the first mortar ships available to most players, but it's one of the weakest naval ships in the game as well, and there are better mortar ships in future tiers when it really starts to matter. Chances are you won't have the skill to use this ship effectively when it first becomes available to you, so we recommend skipping this and saving up for a higher tier mortar ship in the future. And speaking of the future, at level 6 we already see an improved mortar ship. That is, of course, the Manta. This ship is similar to its level 5 counterpart, the Kestrel, but with a heavy mortar instead. In other words, you are paying an additional 20,000 in doubloons and materials to make a mortar ship that can carry a heavy mortar instead of a smaller one. Some people will undoubtedly find benefit from this, but most players won't have enough gunnery experience when they first hit level 6 to make this worthwhile, and therefore we recommend skipping it. Come back to this ship once you reach a higher tier to decide if you would get value out of this ship or not at that point. Our next level 6 ship is the Orca. This ship is branded as an improved pirate ship, and at first glance it seems like a good pickup. However, if you look at all the options available to you in the shipwright, you'll find that there's at least 2 other pirate ships that can outperform this one. They are both cheaper than the Orca as well. Those are, of course, the Dart and the Bullet. The only area where this ship actually succeeds is as a naval escort, but at level 6 there's actually a purpose-built ship for this, and we recommend that you build that ship over this one. In essence, you should skip the Orca. It can't perform its primary duty any better than the ships that you already have, and it's just a wasted expense. Next, we have what could be one of the most controversial placements of all the ships in this list, and that is the level 7 Goose. This ship is just bad, and to fully appreciate just how bad, we have to take a moment and discuss a very important concept in cargo trading, and that is trade velocity. You see, trade velocity is the measurement of how much money a ship makes over time. It's like if you're doing a job in real life and you get paid an hourly rate. Only in Tradelands, it's doubloons per minute. Here's a chart of all the ships in the game as of recording this video and their current trading velocities. You can see how all the dedicated trading ships perform on this chart, and they make a curve at the top. This is known as the trading curve. As a merchant, your objective is to stay as close as you can to this upper curve at all times. As you can see, the Goose is right here. And it's a significant downgrade, and it actually slows down your trading velocity if you build it, and will actually make you a worse trader overall. It is an awful choice for any true trader in this game. The only value that it still has is in its higher gun deck, but then the Widgeon exists, so just build that if you really care about such things. It's sad, really, because at one point in time, this ship was one of the best mid-tier traders in the game, but a change in the way that cargo and speed were calculated that happened over a year ago have relegated this ship to the dustbin of your dockmaster's inventory. And the next logical ship to rate after the Goose is none other than the level 7 Widgeon, also a member of our F tier. We have a nickname for this ship, the Hulk of the Sea. It is a mid-tier combat ship that can just soak up damage, and that's pretty much it. And in this capacity, it actually does really well. It gets featured in naval battles every now and then, but the ship is intended to be an escort for the Goose. And since the Goose isn't really seen much, I mean, this ship just floats around and doesn't do anything unless you get in too close. And that's where this ship really starts to fall flat, because if you're a raider, you just go around the ship and there's nothing the Widgeon can do about it. As a result, you're going to need another ship to help you in combat if you're going up against a raider, and that other ship's probably going to do most of the heavy lifting where this ship can't compete. That makes the Widgeon, on paper at least, a terrible choice if you're looking for an escort ship. The next on our F tier list is the Serpent. This ship is a story of a terrible fall from grace. At one point in time, this was the best trader in the game, hands down. Those who knew how to handle this ship could get it to outperform the Atlas in overall trade velocity on the legacy cargo system. Today, however, 2 important changes to the game have actually made the Serpent completely obsolete. The first change was the addition of the island of Salem. You see, the Serpent was a ship designed to maximize profits on one very specific trade route, and that trade route was Whitecrest to Nova. When Salem was introduced, it lost its edge because the Atlas could earn a lot more money by trading there, and the Serpent had trouble getting to that location. And as a result, most people relegated this to a B-class ship. The second change, and the one that permanently destroyed the ship's main advantage, was the move of all cargo into a cargo hold. You see, the Serpent had one very important competitive advantage against any other ship, and that was it could be unloaded and reloaded in 30 seconds flat because all the boxes were neatly stacked near the pilot's house. You didn't even have to get off the ship if you parked it right, and because of this, the more you traded in it, the more you outperformed even its closest rival, the Atlas. If you traded in this ship for an hour straight, you could earn 20% or more higher returns than you could in an Atlas doing the same trade route. But all good things must come to an end, I suppose. This ship, like the Goose, was left behind and just forgotten. If you plan on building this ship for its junk sales, you're better off to just wait a few levels, and there are some true junk sailing ships that come available, and those are actually worth buying. The next is the level 9 Cutlass, and it's another F tier ship. We have a nickname for this type of ship, and it's called the Cookie Cutter. It looks like someone just took a galleon-shaped cookie cutter and pressed it into a block of wood and slapped a rail on it and called it a day. But its cosmetic performance isn't why it's F tier. It's because the ship was nerfed pretty hard about a year ago, and it never recovered. This ship is supposed to be a fast trade ship, and some players will brand this as one of the best solo trading ships in the game. And at one point in time, this was actually true. When you were aligned with the wind, no pirate ship could catch you in this thing. That made it an ideal trade ship if you were on a server with a lot of pirates. However, times have changed, and pirate ships that are lower level than you can actually now easily catch you in any direction. There's no way to outrun them because this ship never received a speed upgrade. As a result, you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage if you're in this ship, especially if you're doing it solo. It's best to just pretend this ship doesn't exist for the time being and hope that sometime in the future it gets an update. Our next ship is the level 9 Hook, and it's one of the worst purpose-built pirate ships in the game. It's just too expensive, really. It is unique in that it carries 2 heavy cannons on 3 of its 4 sides, and on paper, this seems like an awesome ship to go privateering in, but when you actually try it in game, people just outrun you. You know, my group often uses the phrase, a good pirate crew will always find a way to board you. But in this one example, it's actually the opposite. An experienced trader will just know how to avoid you entirely, making this purchase a complete waste of your money. And just how much are you wasting? Well, if you can only bring 2 heavy cannons to bear on a ship at any point in time, that means this ship has one of the highest cost per firepower ratios of any ship you can build. That's because you have to pay a premium to build this ship, and it doesn't ever return that value back to you. This is why you may not encounter this ship much in game, by the way. It's because nobody wants to use it. And I'll tell you what, if you don't build this ship either, I don't think anyone will really care that you actually forgot about it. And now, to round out our F tier is the only level 10 ship to make this list, and that is the Prometheus. This ship costs over 1 million in doubloons and material costs, and for what? A 3 heavy cannon broadside? A 4-speed engine? Let me tell you something, we didn't include ironclads in this video, but that doesn't stop me from talking about them. You can get an ironclad for the same price as this ship, but on those you actually get turrets, so you should go that route if you want a ship with an engine. If you're a returning player and you happen to miss this, you should know that the developers actually removed this ship from the game and then added it back in. It's the only reason it's on this list. The reality is this ship can't even perform its role very well, and it made sense to remove it. Adding it back was purely a nostalgia move for those who complained about it being removed in the first place. And if you don't really care about nostalgia, then you're better off just ignoring this thing altogether. The Prometheus is a waste of time and money. Now we move on to our C tier. These are ships that have some situational value, but aren't really your best options. Or they're something that would be entirely optional to build, and if you skipped it, it would be fine. The first is the level 1 Swallow, and it's in the C tier. Since you start with a level 1 ship already, you don't really need another one, but if you're going to build one of the ships that are available to you, well, the Swallow is the best of the group. This ship pretty much pays itself off. It's the only ship that has a payback time of under an hour. Moreover, if you build this ship, you could technically skip out on building the Heron at level 2 and end up just fine from a cargo trading standpoint. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with building this ship if that's what you choose to do. The next ship is the level 2 Heron. This ship is just too expensive for what you get, and that's why it ends up in the C tier. If you are able to bypass this ship altogether, then we recommend that you go ahead and do that. I mean, the Swallow is a nice alternative, but most new players will end up buying this ship out of ignorance, if nothing else. And so, if you ended up getting it yourself, well, set the expectation that you're probably going to scrap this ship sometime in the near future. Next up is the level 3 Starling. It's another one of those odd cookie cutter ships, but this time it's meant to represent a dhow. The ship is the first true crosswind sailing ship, and it has really good performance characteristics. It's just too bad that its performance doesn't matter at this level. The issue is that the other ships at level 3 also have good crosswind performance, so you don't get any value from this ship at all. In fact, the Dart pretty much outperforms this ship in every way. So the Starling can be skipped entirely and you'll be just fine. It's for that reason that we decided to list this ship in the C tier, in recognition of its decent performance characteristics. It's just outclassed at level 3. In fact, had it been a level 2 ship, the outcome would have been much different. The level 6 Shark is next on our list. This is one of the earliest purpose-built combat ships if you exclude some of the mortar ships that have already been rated. It does an okay job in this role actually, and it is an entry-level ship with a decent broadside. Where it struggles is in actual gameplay, where more experienced players have higher tier and by extension more expensive and powerful ships available to them. As a result, unless you're in some sort of a role-playing scenario, this ship, if you bring it out, is likely to just cause some other player with a bigger inventory of ships to just outclass you and pound you to dust. If you even try to take this out on the seas on a public server, it's likely someone will see it and just chase you down. That's why we've rated it as a C. It's a recognition of its value in a rock, paper, scissors matchup with ships of a similar level, but it's also a warning that when you use it on public servers, you're likely to be outmatched. The Fox is a level 8 ship that also gets a C ranking. This ship is a strange amalgamation of characteristics that on paper make it look like it should be great in almost every category, but the end result is a ship that is okay at most things and great at nothing. It's just an expensive mess of statistically relevant categories that turn this into an overpriced sailing ship that is outclassed by pretty much every other level 8 ship available. This ship is an important reminder that the best ship is the one that can perform the role it was designed to do, and it performs that one role well. A trade ship should be good at trading. A combat ship should be good at combat. If any of these ships can be marginally good at a secondary role, well, that's just an added bonus, but it isn't a requirement to its success. The Fox tries to be the best at all 3 categories, and it ends up being average at all of them. The Beaver and the Otter, both available at level 8, cost around 150,000 in doubloons and materials, while the Fox is a whopping 750,000 in doubloons and materials. That's a big chunk of change for a ship that just basically copies both of these ships but does it less well. You know what? You should just build the Otter and the Beaver separately. Together, they are half the price, and all you have to do is just switch into those ships, for whatever you're wanting to do with them. You're far better off doing that than paying to build this overpriced mess. The Mastiff is next, a level 10 trading ship that is unfortunately heavily underpowered and not worth buying, and that's why it sits in our C tier. Before the introduction of the Grouse and the Kirin, the Mastiff was the only trade ship available at level 10, and many traders had to begrudgingly accept that they had to build this because there was no other options, but the ship is squarely underneath the trading curve, which means that it has a lower trading velocity and is actually slowing you down on your trade runs rather than speeding it up, as most people assume that it does. Now that the Kirin and the Grouse are both available at level 10, this ship should never be built by players. Some will try to explain to you that this ship is still better against pirates, but that's just an imperfect understanding of how trade lane defenses actually work. The truth is, this ship is just a very bad investment altogether. The only advantage this ship has is that it's cheaper than the Grouse, but by 15,000 in doubloons and materials, you can just do the triangle trade one time in whatever ship you have already, and you'll have enough to buy a ship which is far better than this one. Why wouldn't you do that? Actually, if you look at the trade velocity report that is on the website, you can see its deficiency as a trade ship. It's very clear. Had this ship actually ended up as a level 9 ship instead of a level 10 ship, well, that would be a lot different. It would have probably received an A rating. as it would have been the very clear successor to the Marlin. But as it is right now, this ship just is outclassed in every way. It can still earn you a profit though, which is why it's in the C tier instead of the F tier, but make no mistake about it, you should skip this ship if you can. The Mule is next, a level 12 trading ship that has a very brief moment in the sun before almost immediately being shelved as obsolete. If you remove all outside factors, the Mule is actually a great trading ship and is one of the top 5 in the game for overall trading velocity. That comparison considers exclusive ships, by the way, not just the ones in this video, and that's saying a lot, right? So surely this is a top-rated ship? Well, unfortunately, a comparison has to consider the reality that the ship exists in, and to that end, it has a major issue to contend with, and that issue is the Grouse. When you consider that the Grouse is available at level 10, 2 levels before the Mule, it's also cheaper than the Mule, and has virtually the same trading velocity as the Mule, it makes very little sense to build this ship. I mean, the Mule has a slightly higher trading velocity, but if you do the math between the Grouse and the Mule, you'll find out that you would have to trade in this ship for over 1,000 hours straight before you will actually start making more money in this ship than you would in a Grouse. I mean, you have to be some kind of crazy cargo grinder to get that kind of trading done in a year. Hell, the average person works around 2,000 hours a year. That means making the Mule profitable in under 6 months is actually a full-time job. Man, just skip this ship and stick with the Grouse. You'll level up at the same speed, and you'll have all that extra money in your bank to spend on other Tradelands toys. But hey, it's still technically more profitable than the Grouse by a very slim margin, so we'll go ahead and put the Mule in the C tier in recognition of that alone. Remember when we said that personal bias would be excluded from our tiering model? Well, here's the defining reason why. The Camel, a level 16 trade ship and the current flagship of our whole trading company, but it is clearly a C tier ship. This rating comes despite its top performing trade velocity among all the trade ships in the game. The reason it gets such a poor rating has less to do with the ship itself and more to do with another important factor, which is known as the trading curve. This is a measurement of how much of a return of investment you will get when you invest in a specific profession. And unfortunately, the Camel is at the waning end of this curve, meaning that you are investing in a ship that will only net you a value for the next few levels before other professions begin to be more profitable than cargo trading. And as a result, most people will build this ship as the pinnacle achievement, a statement to others to say that they have reached the end game of cargo trading, rather than as a way to further improve their trade velocity. As the last profitable ship available to cargo traders, we've rated this one as a C. At least it's a better value than the Mule. You can actually start making a profit in this one after just a month of trading instead of half a year, so it does have that going for it. And that brings us to our B tier. These are ships that are decent enough that they're worth building if you have the extra cash to spend, but are not necessarily a requirement. Our first ship in the B tier is a fan favorite, the Bullet. As one of the fastest ships in the game, it operates as one of the best early pirate ships. Many players will continue to use this ship even into the end game, and as a result, it's never really a bad idea to get this ship. However, if you're trading, the Dart offers the same value, minus some of the cannons, which you wouldn't be using anyway. Since you're probably building this ship at a lower level, we recommend prioritizing the Dart over this ship unless you are 100% sure you are going into the privateering profession and want to get an early start. The level 6 Dragon is the next B tier ship on our list. This is one of the best steamships in the game, and we recommend anyone who can afford it to get it. It's capable of intercepting pretty much any other ship in the game, especially all of the trade ships, which makes it great for privateering. Many in the community will actually use this as a utility ship or a taxi, which it also excels at. The reason why this ship isn't an A or S tier ship is simply its cost, which you aren't likely to be able to pay off just trading in this ship alone. Also, the engines that are needed to make this aren't available to players at level 6, meaning you're more likely to be building this after you've already reached higher tier ships. In which case, building this is more convenience than necessity. The level 8 Otter is another B tier ship. As far as mortar-capable ships go, this is one of the better ones. It's cheap for what you get, meaning it gives you a good price per firepower ratio, and it has many of the right assets to be an effective combat ship. This includes a strong broadside, protective cannons on 3 of its 4 sides, and of course the option to place mortars. All of this for just 150,000 in doubloons and materials, a great value for what you're getting in return. The level 9 Stilleto is another one of the cookie cutter ships, and it's actually a decent ship as well. It is an upgrade from the Cutlass that trades cargo capacity for an additional cannon, which is an upgrade you should absolutely take. Where this ship shines is when you are in a 1 or 2 man crew, or in a very small navy, in which case the number of ships that you can have in the field at the same time will actually make a big difference. However, if you're able to get 3 other players to join you on a regular basis, you might be better off building a larger warship than this one, which makes it somewhat situational, but as far as small ships go, this is a good purchase. The next is the level 10 Corsair, a rather expensive ship, but its junk sales make up for the added cost. This is one of 2 junk-rigged ships, which are actually pretty decent and might be worth buying. However, there aren't a lot of players that use this ship, and that's because there are a lot of other ships that offer similar or better performance characteristics, many of which are also cheaper. As a result, we see this as more of an optional purchase, something that you will want to buy if you have some spare cash and materials lying around, but not one of your first options after you reach level 10. Rounding out the B tier is the level 12 Gargoyle. In fairness, this ship was just released and players haven't quite figured out all of its nuances yet, but in raw firepower, this ship is pretty good. It also has the ability to carry cargo, which it underperforms as a trade ship, but it can actually make for a weirdly heavy armed pirate ship that's meant for sinking trade ships. Anyway, this ship is best known for its cosmetic value, which isn't something we're rating here, and is also why players may rate this ship higher than our data models predict, which is solidly in the B tier, by the way. The other thing to watch, however, is how it stacks up against other dedicated warships as players get more familiar with its unique characteristics. Next is the A tier, and these ships are the ones that are on the bleeding edge of their performance maximums in the category in which they were built to perform. Since these are often the best ships in the game at that specific level whenever you can get them, you will notice that in some cases they will follow a progression path that constantly has you picking a new ship as you level up to replace the previous one. The first ship is the level 3 Dart. When I was leveling up, I struggled with the question of which ship to build, the Dart or the Bullet. On paper, they both look the same. But from a purely data analysis perspective, there is no doubt the Dart reigns supreme here. It has a clear advantage as a trade ship. It performs well as an interceptor and is an all-around utility ship. It's the recommended trade ship to build at level 3, and it will last you until level 5, and in some cases it may even take you to later in the game, before you even have to consider replacing it as your primary trade ship. And that's on its trade ship qualities alone. It will last you until the end of the game as a potential utility ship. That's why this is clearly an A tier ship. Next, we have the level 5 Pheasant. If you built a Dart at level 3, then this is where you will be tempted to upgrade it to the Pheasant. If you did decide to build it, then you will receive an immediate improvement to your trade velocity, to the tune of over 100 doubloons per minute spent at sea, and that's nothing to laugh at. However, this is also somewhat of a money trap, because in the next few levels, you're going to consistently have the option of upgrading your ship to another trade ship with a higher trade velocity. And this constant temptation will eventually convince you to replace this ship, although if you've built the Pheasant, you should keep it instead. Our advice is to make a call once you've reached level 5, and that call should be to either build the Pheasant or to hold out and buy the level 6 Marlin instead. A key consideration would be if you're making enough trade velocity on the ship that you have already, or if you spend a lot of time as a crewman on another ship, then you really don't need the Pheasant right now, and waiting for the Marlin is a better option. If you ultimately decide to go with the Pheasant, then you will want to use this ship until you hit level 8 and avoid the temptation of replacing it any sooner than that. In this way, you can maximize your money's worth when you bought this ship, instead of just turning around and replacing it every single time you level up. Another A-tier ship is the level 8 Beaver. This ship is an immediate upgrade. It has a higher trade velocity of any ship at or below its level. That means that this should always be a consideration whenever you are looking at ships to upgrade at level 8. If you chose to build the Pheasant at level 5 instead of waiting for the Marlin at level 6, then this is a no-brainer, as the Beaver upgrades you from getting roughly 450 doubloons per minute to almost 600 doubloons per minute, a sizable upgrade and a complete game changer if you're a cargo trader. Where it gets trickier is if you consider upgrading from the Marlin to the Beaver. It's only an upgrade of around 100 doubloons per minute, which can be a lot if you plan to do a lot of trading in it. But at the same time, you would have to pay 150,000 in doubloons and materials, which means you could end up having a cash deficit for a while. And it may not justify the upgrade since the Marlin is actually fairly good in its own right. But either way, the Beaver is the best trade ship until you hit level 10, so if you're trading in this ship, good job on making an excellent choice. Our final A tier ship is the Kirin. This is one of the best junk-rigged ships in the game at present. It has a decent cargo trading capability, which means if you're tired of trading along the same trade lanes, or if you're constantly getting low demand notifications, this ship can open up a whole new world of trade routes to you that other ships can't use. That makes it one of the most versatile trade ships in the game. But the problem is the same as all the other level 10 ships, and that is the overwhelming value of the Grouse, which relegates this to a backup choice and not a primary one. Moreover, it has some issues operating as a combat ship despite its decent armament, which is unfair to actually grade it on because that's not really this ship's primary function. So instead, we just decided to rate this as a utility ship with a preference towards cargo trading. And it does a decent job at operating in this capacity. But at the end of the day, utility is a nice to have, not a must have. And the Kirin should be a backup trade ship when your primary routes aren't working well. But always build the Grouse first in any event, and the Kirin can be our second choice. And now we arrive at our S tier. These are ships that nearly every Tradelands player will have at one point, and you are likely to see them anytime that you are playing in-game. First in our S tier is the level 6 Marlin. If you made the decision that you weren't going to be a trader early on, and instead picked one of the other professions like privateering, or you decided to join a navy, the chances are the Marlin was the last dedicated trade ship that you ever built. That's because it's a game changer in terms of giving you a decent trade velocity. At almost 500 doubloons per minute in mid-game, that's impressive. It is the pinnacle of the trading curve, and it has good armament, which means it can play a dual role in some situations. An example of this would be operating it as a mothership to a group of pirate raiders that then need to use this ship to store their cargo so they can ultimately sell it. Only dedicated traders will likely spend the time and energy needed to replace this ship, and even then, it should still be built and used by almost every trader in the game. The only ones who may skip this ship are those who took the Pheasant to Beaver route, which we discussed earlier on this video, and decided to bypass this ship entirely. Still, if you took the Marlin, chances are you will use this ship all the way until level 10, meaning that you got 4 levels of value from this ship before you ultimately had to replace it. That makes the Marlin the #1 overall mid-tier ship in the entire game, a good pickup for nearly everyone, and an essential one if your primary profession is not a cargo trader. The next S-tier ship is the Marauder, and if you are a pirate, then there is no doubt why this is on the list. It has all the right characteristics to make this the perfect raiding ship. It is fast, it intercepts well, it can sternlock pretty easily, and it has a cargo capacity, which allows it to operate without a mothership, which smaller ships may need in order to be profitable. It's worth noting that there was a past update that actually nerfed this ship, reducing its overall speed and its ability to pirate. This was done in order to give some of the other ships, namely the Taipan, the top slot as the go-to pirate ship. An update that occurred shortly after this actually upgraded the ship's sailing characteristics and once again put this ship in the top slot of all potential pirate ships. This is a sign that the ship was meant to be as good as it is, and it should be expected to remain in the S tier for quite some time. But even if you are not intending to go the privateering route, it's still recommended that you pick up this ship. It's essential to understand the characteristics of how this ship operates in order to evade it, or in the cases of naval combat, how to avoid letting it reach your blind spots. Moreover, it's an essential utility ship, with its decent crosswind speed and impressive overall running speed, which makes it an essential part of any player's fleet. The next ship is the Phoenix, and we have a nickname for this ship. It's called the Battlecruiser of the Grand Isles. In naval warfare terminology, the term battlecruiser represents a type of cruiser defined as powerful enough to destroy anything at or below its class, and fast enough to evade anything that could destroy it. This definition seems to fit the Phoenix perfectly. This is one of the best all-round warships in the game that met the criteria to be included in today's video. It has a powerful broadside, the ability to mount mortars, and protection on 3 of its 4 sides, which means you have to be careful when you approach this ship. Moreover, its engine and sail speed allow it the versatility to choose when and how it will engage its enemy, an advantage that the opposing ship may not always have, especially if they would be stronger than the Phoenix. As a result, this is clearly an S-tier ship and a recommended pickup for anyone interested in naval combat. And it's also one of the few ships that demand a high price tag that are actually worth it. Next is the level 10 Grouse, and man, the introduction of this ship was a game changer, especially if you are a trader. I still hear the words of the player who created the ship repeatedly extolling this as the best ship in the game, and the truth is, he's 100% right. This is the best ship in the game, and I'm not just saying that lightly. When this ship was first introduced, we actually thought this was a trick to get people to buy it, to help generate doubloons to support the person who created it, because that was part of the contest rules. But months later, after no nerf came, we began to wonder if this overpowered trade ship was actually legit, and then we debated whether or not we needed to actually report on it. And now that we're looking at it again, and it's been here for a couple of months, it really looks like it's here to stay. The power of this ship can really be seen in 2 ways. First is in looking at the trading curve, which I'm showing on the screen. This is a measure of how profitable it can be to be a cargo trader, and you can really see at level 10, this is when you reach the peak. So, where does the Grouse fit on this chart? Right here. And wow! It's worth noting that the next closest ship is the Marlin and the Mule respectively, and they don't even come close. They're on the line, whereas this one is twice as high and above it. This means that when you build this ship, you're getting twice as much return on your investment as you would from building any other ship for trading. The second thing is in total trade velocity. Here is a list of the top 5 ships in the game in overall trading velocity and the levels in which they're built. Notice that the Grouse comes in 4th on this list, which at first glance doesn't look that impressive, but once you consider that the Grouse only costs 300,000 in doubloons and materials, and that the next ship on this list costs 500,000 or more, you start to notice that you're getting a far better deal for your trade velocity than you are building any other ship. In fact, so good that once you hit level 10 and you've built the Grouse, you do not need another trade ship. The final icing on this cake is that once you have this ship, the reality of upgrading this to another ship, like the Mule or the Camel, hell, even the Demeter, you can already get a trade velocity of over 800 doubloons per minute. If you plan your trade routes correctly in the Grouse, you don't need a more expensive ship just to get a few extra doubloons per minute. I mean, go mine something. You'll get a better return than upgrading your ship beyond the Grouse. Once you have this ship, you've essentially reached endgame when it comes to trading. So good job. Once everyone sees you in this ship, regardless of how you choose to decorate it, they will all know that you have effectively have the modern Tradelands version of the legacy game's Atlas. And finally, the last ship for today is the ever-impressive Tyrant. While not really a good trade ship, this is a very versatile combat and privateering ship that operates as a heavy firepower alternative ship to add to your arsenal. The Tyrant makes the S tier not only because of its performance in combat, but also because it has one of the best cost for firepower ratios in the entire game. The ship costs an amazingly cheap 200,000 in doubloons and material costs, making it one of the cheapest level 10 ships in the game, let alone one of the cheapest combat ships in the game. Its powerful broadside and decent sailing characteristics make this a common ship that makes an appearance in naval videos that are shared by players across Tradelands, and the data supports why. I know there will be some that claim that had we included other dedicated warships in this video, and if we were not so restrictive on our method of elimination, this ship wouldn't be as good. I mean, this ship is nothing next to a bingle hopper, right? Well, let me tell you something about that. For the cost of a bingle hopper, you could build 25 of these ships. Show me a single video where a single fully manned bingle hopper takes down a fleet of 25 fully manned tyrants, and then we've got something to talk about. Until then, the Tyrant remains one of the best values for your money, and it's a nice alternative to the Phoenix, which could be beyond your price range. And with that, we've now rounded out our ship rating list for today. Boy, this video was a lot longer and more complicated than we expected, but I really wanted to put the time and energy in because I wanted to recognize all of the effort that was put in by my fleet mates who helped me produce these numbers over the past 10 months, helped me gather some of the pictures, and ultimately did some of the tests that allowed me to make some of the comments that I did in this video. And we probably won't do another one like this for a while unless there's a genuine interest, so let us know. But that's it for today. Thank you all for watching.